is February the 20th, 2017. Kay Randall here, and I'm working on case .011. And this is the case where you gave me the coordinates of 34.108.551 and 118.345179. And I have the questions here, and I can do it in two ways. I can begin by answering the questions about the event, and then go to the person, because I read for the person, I prepared in reading for the person on January 26th, and then also again on February 20th, both of those in 2017, which gives us two different peeks into the person. But I would like to give you my impression about the event.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Repeat back to me slowly the coordinates.
The coordinates that you gave me were 34.108.551, and there would be a minus 118.345179. That's what's here.
Minus 118.345.
179.
Let me repeat. 34.108.551.
Correct.
Second was minus 3118.
No. 118.345179.
Got it. All right. And you said that the readings on the person were done on what the dates again? You said
January 26th.
Yeah.
2017, and February the 20th, 2017. I did reading on the person that day and then today, and didn't look back to that day, when I did this one, just to give an update, because we've been working on this for a while. I just wanted to see what was going on.
What about the coordinates? When did you do the coordinate reading?
January 26th.
26 was, okay, and the coordinates and the person on the 26th.
Right.
And on the 20th, on February 20th.
All I did was the person.
Got it. Okay, now, what you suggested, I think you wanted to do is look at the coordinates or report out in the coordinates first.
What I want to do is, you said key example questions about the event.
Yeah.
Okay, and I wanted to go through that, if you don't mind.
Good. I like that. That's the way I would like it.
Okay. So you said what occurred. That was your first question. And I put down, now this I went into a deep altered state and, just wrote out my impressions. There is a fourth dimensional portal in this area, in the area of the coordinates. It's very near to the site. And the portal, which is a portal between dimensions, is related to an underwater base near the Catalina Island off the coast of Southern California. And on that date and time, a craft landed with occupants. I would say landed, I would say appeared in this dimension.
Hold. I want to make sure I write down the base, underwater base was near Catalina Island.
Catalina Island, Catalina Island.
And the next thing you said,
off the coast of Southern California.
Okay. And then the next word you said was
okay, on that date and time of the event.
Okay.
A craft, I'd say landed, but I would say it appeared in this dimension to land with occupants which were partly extraterrestrial and a few humans as well. So there were.
and a few humans. Okay, go ahead.
Some aboard the craft were human. Okay, that's where there's a clarification here. This is part, or this particular event is part of ongoing education of influential humans about preparation for a future potential event. The future potential event is a geologic destabilization in the area. I'll tell you more about it in a minute, but I'm going down and answering your questions. The second question you posed was how long was the event occurrence? The event took more than 2 hours, but the witness's memory is partially blocked, and the witness does not remember the entire event. What precipitated the event? That's your question. That's the third question. Oh no, excuse me, the third was what was the cause of what occurred? And my response is there was a planned meeting between high-ranking civilian and military personnel and the others, the watchers, the extraterrestrials, to give directions concerning geologic stabilization.
All right, high-ranking military
and civilian personnel and the others, the watchers, the ETs.
All right.
What precipitated the event? That means what would be the basic? That's the fourth question on your email. Certain underwater, offshore, and onshore tectonic plate movements or potential movements inspired the meeting. And I feel that I don't want to go too fast for you.
Sorry, I'll stop you. If you're going too fast, I'll say hold.
I feel that the tectonic plate movements were catalyzed by oil drilling and other incursions into the tectonic plate area by humans. What was the purpose of the event? That's your next question.
Oil drilling and other incursions by whom?
By humans into the tectonic plate, the rather sensitive tectonic plate regions. In other words, parts of the tectonic interface there up and down the California coast. They're like locking points. They're like trigger points. Now, I put together question, the next one, which is 5 and 6. Your 5 was what was the purpose of the event, and then what was the agency of action?
I don't remember saying that.
Okay, but this is all, I'm just reading from your email.
Read for me.
Okay.
5. You're taking 5 plus 6 together.
Right. Wow.
And tell me what you got by.
Okay. The agency of action was a council of 3 to 5 alien species whose mission it is to protect and preserve the offshore base, that is that base down there near Catalina Island off the Southern California coast, and to monitor the activity of humans in that area. So there's an agency of action which is literally a communication network between these alien species. There are 3 to 5 of these alien species.
All right, now, that's the agency of action. What was number 5?
Number 5 is number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What is the purpose of the event? And I've already told you the purpose, what precipitated the purpose. And then the agency of action. I just put the agency of action together with the purpose. It was a warning by this group of ET species. And then I'm going to go on to tell you the cause.
Okay.
The cause of the warning is destabilization of plate tectonics in the area by human offshore oil drilling and other activities which destabilize the plates. And then I'll tell you more about the target. Your next question is to the target. I've got a lot more about the target, so I'll tell you about the target in a few minutes. But the reason, the person that we're talking about, the actual target. But here is what I have to say about the reason that it happened to this person. This is case number .011. The target is vocal and an excellent communicator. It was believed by the others, the watchers, the ETs, that he would be able to effectively communicate the warning to others. Now, I'm going to tell you more about the target in a few minutes. I'll go deeply into about the target, if you wish, to separate that from this. But I'm just saying, what I'm feeling is that this target was deliberately chosen for his potential to help achieve the purpose of the council. I'm going to call the agency of action as council. In other words, he was chosen for his potential to do that. And here's a larger pattern. This all fits into a much larger pattern of behavior, which is more than just this event. The pattern is to place thoughts, insights, and information telepathically.
Are you saying spots? S-P-O-T-S?
No, to place thoughts. T-H-O-U-G-H-T-S. Thoughts. Ideas.
Thoughts, good. Thoughts, what are the other two things?
Insights, which would mean like understanding, and information into the minds of people who are able and are willing and capable of spreading this throughout humans. The disclosure of alien presence will take place this way. In other words, by reaching what could be called a critical mass or a critical number of individuals who are compelled, and they may not understand why they're compelled, but they feel they are compelled to take certain actions, primarily protect the environment, make sure natural resources are protected, prevent nuclear annihilation, that kind of thing. But they're going to feel they're compelled to do this, and they may not totally understand why. So the disclosure of alien presence will take place this way, and many contactees, such as this person, will be recruited or activated to share their information at the right moment. Okay? So there are many individuals who are in the population now who have been contacted like this individual, maybe not as dramatically, not in an event per se that could be pinpointed. Many of them will not or do not have conscious memories. If you talk to them, they probably wouldn't even say they believe in ETs, but they will be compelled to protect the environment, propelled to essentially protect the planet or protect those parts of the planet which also are, should we say, important to the ETs as well. And I feel in this case, there is this specific base, and this base seems to be under the ocean. It is partly what we would call in this dimension and partly in a slightly different dimension, but it is definitely a physical presence where it is. I would like to tell you something about this patient, this person.
Okay, hold on. You want to tell me about
the person of case 011.
All right.
I feel this is a fully human individual. In other words, I don't feel this person is a hybrid who has been monitored and abducted, but not in such a way that it was so traumatic that, it overwhelmed everything, since early childhood. This individual has been followed, essentially, in development, has been selected, and tissue samples may have been taken, especially early in childhood, may actually have a scar on his body from early childhood that he can't account for. But he's not a hybrid, okay? But has been chosen because of his ability to communicate. I feel that this person is either a film producer or an activist or a very vocal person, very energetic. But what's really interesting is between last month, January 26th and February 20th, his throat area has really been ratcheted down. So I feel he feels blocked right now. And I got the sense that, quote unquote, these are the words that came to me. They're not something I usually use. Running scared. I feel he's running scared, quote unquote, right now. Feels like a message of great importance is being repeated to him. He wants to get it out to the public in a film or other means. There's a sense of urgency. I would say this person is a contactee, and not necessarily a hybrid, as I mentioned, but was chosen because of talents, innate abilities, or some connections that he has. This is seen to be a person who has the potential for being heard somehow by the greater population. And very intuitive, but has a lot of anxiety about, it's more like free-floating anxiety. Like something's going to happen and feels like that something is going to happen pretty soon. So I did get something unusual today as opposed to last time. I feel he's not feeling as well physically today, February 20th, 2017, as he did January 26th, 2017. Because today what I picked up was he may be experiencing some rather unusual autoimmune issues from stress, especially stress activated. This may include some demyelinization in the peripheral, at the very base of the peripheral motor nerves of the lower spine. because I get a sense that he may have some tingling or even numbness, perhaps even some neuropathies of some sort from the lower body. Doesn't seem to be up in the upper body. It seems to be in the lower, and it seems to be coming from L3, L4, L5 down to the sacrum. Now, L3, 4, 5, and down to the sacrum showed up before on January 26th as being somewhat tight and blocked, but today it's showing up as possibly having some demyelinization near the root basis. You know how how the motor nerves come out of that area, go down into the lower part of the body. Also today, there's something going on with some stress in his right shoulder, but that didn't show up before. He does have tension up in the upper part of his back, thoracic 2 to thoracic 6, but today the right shoulder showed up. That could be just an incidental thing, but for some reason, his throat area is really closed down today, and his thyroid seems a little low, whereas last time it was really open. I mean, in January 26th, it was really open. So something is going on. It's probably more than just having a sore throat. I feel he's feeling like he has this message to share or something, and he can't get it out. He's not sure he can get it out. I asked who might be the agency, what species. I did get the short grays coming from Zeta reticuli. Also the Arcturians, multidimensional, and some from the Pleiades. So there are more than one species, the short grays being from Zeta reticuli being one of the predominant ones. And these are species which are not, they are benevolent in the sense that they have, I have more about them, on the back here. The others are the watchers, are representatives of what's called the Supreme Council of Elders. I'm going to stop this first audio file. Here we go, now we're recording to get the message out, not so much about the event, but about to protect the stability of the region. I feel it is to be honored.
Okay, well, that's very interesting. I guess what I'd like to do is ask you, not now, but when you have a chance, go back to the event, which you described in some detail, okay? And focus on him physically during the event. And see if you were to observe him during the event, you were to be a little mouse shoulder. Where do you see, if you see, anything in terms of his immediate surround? By that I mean, let's say, not what he's looking out at, not what he is moving to or doing, but what is it, where is what kind of an environment? What kind of an environment is he in during the event? And what kind of observations, if you were to be like a foot away, 2 feet away, 3 feet away, 4 feet away, essentially in his surround, what, if anything, would you see?
I'll do that.
as you look at it, okay?
Okay. And I'll do that sometime in the next few days. And then I'll email you and say I have that information, and then you can talk to me about it at your convenience whenever you would like. Yeah, that helps. Because there's such a lot, and the questions are so large. This helps me to know where you want me to focus, and I will do that.
Well, that's a minor thing, because you've been giving me information about some extremely interesting things concerning exactly what the questions were that I gave. Questions that I gave you are answered very well, and I'm really grateful because you focused on exactly the language of my questions, and they gave me the answers. And they were very specific about very sort of corporal space information. And what I just asked you now is to look at the corporeal states of his physiognomy, body. So, I appreciate, by the way, the information concerning his neurological state, because I'll be meeting and examining him in the next 3 days.
That's of high concern to me. High concern to me, because it's such a difference. His state, because it's so different between January 26th and today. So. Well,
I should find out.
Yeah, find out, because he's under a lot more stress. The other thing I was going to ask you, if there is such a base, do you want me to look at it?
I guess at the moment, I feel a little bit like that, Kay, that I do when you give me information about categories of medical data that I don't have expertise in, and I'm very frequently saying, don't bother telling me about chakras, because I don't even know what a chakra is.
Okay, but I could draw you a schematic if you're interested. So if you ever find yourself interested in
I guess the question in my mind about that is it's a really good point, and it kind of leads into the next part of our discussion. I'm not the expert in assessing the value of that category of information. I don't know anything about architecture. I don't know anything about dimensional characterizations of military facilities that I don't have access to. I don't know anything about detail that would come from that, so it would have no meaning for me. But, and this is the key point, it kind of gets to our next part of the question. Others in my confederation with whom I'm working are expert at those things, just like they are not expert in allopathic medicine.
Right.
So my focus with you on the dozen cases we have been the clinical medical issues for which I can get, or for which I already have, personal examination of the patients, or access to brain scans, and access to blood tests, and access to internal medical and neurological data. And so I tend to stay away from having you give me information that has little meaning. Now, having said that, here's the departure point, and we're now finished with 001 into the other subject. Our sponsor and myself and Hal and George are extremely impressed at the granularity of your reporting on the clinical medical data of the individuals. For example, I'll just give you the most recent. On a number of cases, not every single one of our dozen, but on a number of the cases, I have transcribed the factual medical information and given them to the individuals and asked them to tell me what they think. And in almost every case, they basically say that individual, meaning you, knows me very well. And most importantly, a recent one of the patients was a physician, and one of the patients was a sub-cabinet level officer. And both of them said to me, I gave them essentially a written document that took only the theoretical statements that you asserted that were medical, that were actual, based on signs, not symptoms, but based on signs, clinical medical signs. And they both went through them and found that 95% of your statements were correct, and the others they could not determine. So that's pretty impressive. That's better than a physician does when he puts together all of his medical data. That's better than an allopathic physician does.
You can see why I'm certified by the American Board of Scientific Medical Intuition.
I can certainly see that.
There are only two of us who are, Carolyn Miss and myself.
So that is related to a second overlapping part of the Venn diagram. So first we've got the reportage of the reasons for the individual patients I've given you, writ large, having certain physical and neurological characteristics. And this is quite good. I mean, you even described, for example, in one patient, just kind of at the end of the discussion, that the individual had a pond that was significantly larger than the average pond. That's a pretty abstruse thing to say. That's a pretty odd thing to say. That's a pretty strange thing to report. That's a pretty weird thing. But I happen to have that individual's brain scan. And so I measured the pods, and I measured 100 controls. And you were right. I mean, the pods of that particular individual is 100% larger than the average for an age, sex match group of individuals. I mean, there's not very many people that even care about the pods of the brain. So, I mean, that kind of thing all put together is from a piece of the Venn diagram that has to do with the accuracy of clinical, neurological, and cognitive data, which is the other piece of what you described with that. And also, I must say, some of the spinal column defects that you pointed to, which one of the two individuals, in fact, has been very interesting. The encircling second part of the Venn diagram is what is of interest to our sponsor. And it relates to the experiment which I shared that we have discussed, which is the possibility of a simultaneous functional brain scan between you and that facility in Phoenix and this individual's facility, possibly in either Western Europe, probably in London, or in Tel Aviv. And you have already stated that you would be willing to be a subject in the experiment for an attempt for an ineffable contact communication in the time and state, precisely with Geller.
My only concern is that I want I'm trusting you explicitly in that I don't want anything to be implanted, any ideas implanted in my mind by that. You know what I mean?
Well, let me tell you where we are.
Right.
It kind of gets to the departure point of this conversation, Kate.
Right.
I told you that I feel confident about certain pieces of data, and I do not feel confident about other pieces of data. Now, if there was to be a point-to-point communication attempt I can tell you three things about that experiment. Number one, about 1/3 of that, I'm the only expert on Earth because of the functional MRI connectivity systems of what parts of the brain are related to other parts of the brain for communication and quantum telepathy. The second thing is the software associated with the calculations and the manner in which the scan sequences would be done at two different locations. So where the technical people doing the scan sequencing with the radio frequencies used for MRI in both locations were coordinated and using the same Haley-Arc coordinates for looking at the brain simultaneously.
Right.
That's a very rich, very interesting, very complicated, very mature, and very, 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 very advanced software. And each one of those experiments is done individually. So there is a second group of people, one of whom is a PhD engineer, neuroscientist who works for Hal and George at Hal's Institute. He would be in charge of that. Not Kit. Okay. The third part of this sort of a communication gets to the questions that Hal is the world expert in, which has to do with the interpretation of data that comes from verbal reportage of individuals doing remote viewing. And he is expert in that, not me. He's done thousands of cases. I've done 0. And he would be the individual responsible for that. So what the issue is that the sponsor's interested in is tying that all together. And the sponsor is interested in one dimension of that experiment, and I'm interested in the second, Carl's interested in the third, and here the dimensions are. I'm interested in the dimension of showing that quantum connectivity between two proven, competent telepaths can be measured with simultaneity in terms of the portions of the brain that are activated. That is now possible to do. I don't do the math, but I know how to determine what portions of the midbrain connected to the caudate and the putamen connected to the prefrontal cortex and connected to the part of the brain that does imaging is all related to each other. That's something that right now is a very, very rich area of my world of MRI. Hal is the expert in knowing how to design the experiment. And the sponsor is interested in having an experiment designed where the thing that you do and the thing that Uri does happen to be identical to each other. Okay? Both you and Uri have asserted, and in your case, you have, in my judgment, proof. In Uri's case, I can't say that the connectivities that you get for the acquisition of information includes the others.
Oh, yes.
Okay, now, our sponsor is interested in the latter.
Yeah, I know he is.
Hal is interested in the former. I'm interested in the neurology and the genetics. Okay, so what the sponsor has done within the very recent past is said he would like to have us do that. And so I have as you know, have put out feelers to Uri, and there's good news and there's bad news. And I don't know where it's going to work, but that's just because we're dealing with Uri.
Right.
With you, there's only good news, but with Uri, there's good news and bad news. Good news is Uri is very interested. The bad news is Uri is very interested in publicity. And he has been informed by my interlocutor to him in Tel Aviv that ain't going to happen. There will be no manner of anything public about such an experiment.
Right.
None. Zero.
Right.
No.
I think that has to be
one of the members of the team is a senior author of a book or two, actually, about Uri, and is a senior editor of the Financial Times of London. And we would agree that he and only he would have the right of second refusal, with ours having first refusal to anything that such an experimental design and results might portend. For example, if the experiment were to end up being scientifically pristine, the data were to show quantum pseudolocation between two purely, absolutely pristine experimental MRI scanners, we would not say that information could not be part of scientific literature,
right,
with the appropriate protection of sources.
Right.
And we won't say that Uri would never, ever, ever, ever be allowed to say, I was the person in that journal article, subject number B.
Right.
Okay? But he couldn't do it ahead of time.
Right.
Now, he may say, no. If I can't be in control, if I can't have the right of total, my own people present, my own cameras present, my own recording people present, I can't go on TV and say, look what these guys did and what they discovered, then it's not going to happen. Then what we're going to do is find another person than Uri.
Yeah.
And we have several candidates. Now, I won't do that, but I got a feeling that one of them, to be honest with you, just between you and me, one of them may be subject 011.
Okay.
Because it seems to me that there's a certain coalescence of what you said, and I got to now ask you a couple questions so I can write down the answers.
But here's my concern. Excuse me, Kit. That's a silly bird we've got in the back that just gives you some motion. My husband just walked in front of it. You can see him. Here is the deal. Years ago, when I was in the presence of Uri, and he was on a stage, and I was just in the audience, I had very distinct psychokinetic reaction to him. I told you, the ring on my finger bent and broke. I am concerned for my well-being if I am simultaneously linked to this person. So that is my only concern. I do not understand what that link may be. I don't think we need to understand. But I personally, and that's the only time that ever happened to me, although I've had a lot of psychokinetic effects around me in my life, but I've never had a ring bend and break on my finger before.
I understand.
I'm just concerned for my own safety. That's the long and short of it. If I get connected to Uri, what's going to happen? Is the MRI going to explode? I don't know. And I don't think I'm being overly dramatic. I'm just saying, I don't know and I'm not sure. I want to, So this is where, the other thing is, whatever it says, whatever experiment, we're just going to...
Let's get fiscal. Lesson 2, credit card combat. Getting your finances together? Learn to master your money with Credit Karma today for a stronger tomorrow. Defend yourself against generic advice and one-size-fits-all recommendations. Credit Karma gathers